In this program are not those of this station, the USD Department of Media and Journalism, or the University of South Dakota.
Live from the Al Newhart Media Center, this is Just Hear Me Out with Peyton Byers.
Hello and welcome everybody to this very last episode of Just Hear Me Out for the semester. I'm your host Peyton Byers here on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. So glad to have you with me this afternoon for the final episode of Just Hear Me Out of this semester. That's right, this is it, folks. Get your fill today. I can't believe it's been a whole semester doing this show already. Thank you so much to everybody who listens, and everybody who doesn't listen, I guess thank you. I don't know. Anyway, I want to get to a couple little small news stories before I get into the big stuff I want to talk about today, because a couple things I think are absolutely hilarious. So Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York has demonstrated that he is just an nincompoop, I think. So basically what he has done is he said that he wants to ban metal and steel glass and steel skyscrapers in New York, and he wants to implement Green New Deal policies and stuff in New York and make New York a starting place. Whatever, banning glass and steel skyscrapers, that's kind of New York's thing. Anyway, basically, so a bunch of people were like, hey, you want to do that, but you still take an entire motorcade with like SUVs and just tons and tons and tons of carbon emitting vehicles to your workout every morning, and you're very wasteful in where you go and stuff and how all the stuff you take. And he said that he's going to make up for the carbon emissions he puts out doing those things by regulating people in New York City, by passing regulations in New York City. Does he know what he's like? Is he stupid? Like, yeah, you guys, I know I am really bad. Like, I'm just a really bad guy, but get this. I'm going to regulate all of you, so I'm going to punish you guys and make you not be able to use these things so I can use them because I'm kind of bad. Okay. Anyway, he's a nincompoop. That's my official rating of him, nincompoop. And then also, Jussie Smollett. I mean, I'm not trying to do this, guys. I'm not trying to bring him up, but stuff pops up on my Twitter feed and it pops up in my news feed. Jussie Smollett's brother, Jojo Smollett, came out and wrote in an opinion piece, and he defended Jussie, and he said that Jussie did not fake the hate crime and that Jussie's a victim and that he's been wrongly cast as the perpetrator. Even though, as Charles Barkley pointed out so eloquently last time when I showed you, we have the check. We have the check that he signed to the two dudes to fake it. And we have we have literally all the evidence. It's not even a question at this point. Everybody knows Jussie Smollett did it. But somehow he's still his brother's still trying to come out and say that he didn't do it. I don't know what are they even fighting for at this point? What do they think they're getting done? Nobody really knows. Hey, if you like this show, don't forget to go follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. I'm probably going to have this thing started back up next semester. I think I'm going to keep the same name and everything and do the same kind of show. I really enjoyed doing this semester. So if you like it, follow it on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook at Just Hear Me Out 91.1. Twitter at Just Hear Me Out SD. If you'd like to listen to previous versions of episodes of the show, previous editions, they're available on YouTube by searching Just Hear Me Out. There's also links to the YouTube on the Facebook page if you want to find it that way. If you can't find it in YouTube search stuff, it's not very popular. Go figure. Anyway, also, this little announcement here doesn't really affect the future because this is the last episode of the semester. But next semester, if you're still around and you disagree with me on something and you'd like to come on the show and talk to me about any issue, feel free to reach out to me and I will definitely talk to you, and we'll see if we can work out some way for us to get together and do a show together, because I think it'd be really nice to get one of you guys or anybody in here who disagrees with me. And I've had a few people do that, and I'd like to get more. So yeah, you can reach out to me on Facebook or Twitter on those accounts I listed before, and I will try to be checking up on them, and we can see if we can do anything. So let's get right into it here. So last show of the semester. Yesterday was Easter. I hope you all had a happy Easter. I hope you had a good Easter break. We have Easter Monday here. We have college classes. It's sad. South Dakota Board of Regents, please fix that. Anyway, Sri Lanka. So Easter Sunday, there were church and hotel bombings in Sri Lanka. It was a horrible tragedy. 7 suicide bombers thought to be part of a local terror group that was aided by a foreign terror network. Uh, Suicide bombed churches and hotels, Christian churches and hotels. And then this morning, 3 more bombs were found in a car and along the street in one of those cities, and police were trying to defuse it when it blew up. Luckily, nobody was injured, or at least nobody was reported injured. So it looks like the bomb-proof stuff the police were wearing worked. Other devices were reported all over the city, including dozens of detonators found in Colombo's main bus station. So that's sad. The death toll right now is over 290 last time I checked, and there's more than 500 more people wounded from these horrible attacks in Sri Lanka. And you'd think this would have been all over the news yesterday. You'd think it would have been just blanket coverage because, 200 people, 290 people died. 500 more people were wounded. Multiple bombings across multiple cities. And you'd think there would be blanket coverage of it, but no. There's a lot of news networks that were still complaining about Trump during that time and complaining about how the Mueller Report, or trying to convince people that the Mueller Report is actually bad for Trump and stuff like that. Anyway, so they completely, they didn't completely ignore it, but they did not cover it near as much as they covered the New Zealand shooting, which I think they should have covered both of them. But it's kind of sad. The New Zealand shooting death toll was 50. That's bad. That's horrible. That's really bad. But they gave blanket coverage to that. Several days of blanket coverage. They talked about almost nothing else. And then almost 300 people are killed and 500 more are injured. And they just kind of brush it off. So let me ask you guys, why do you personally think that the coverage went the way it did? Do you think it has anything to do with the religions that were involved? So a mosque gets shot up, which is a bad thing. That's a horrible bad thing. And the blanket coverage. Okay, that's good. Cover it. I prefer that you don't put out the name of the shooter, because all that does is incentivize people to do it more because they see they can get famous because of it. So I have a policy on my show, not that anybody really cares that much, but I have a policy. I'm not going to name any shooters, any mass shooting perpetrators, because I don't want to, incentivize it, because that's what they want, is attention. And so, yeah, do you think it was the religion because it was Muslims that got blown up? It fit the leftist narrative that, the white people are doing that because it was a white nationalist attack, which is bad, and the white nationalist people should. It's bad. It's a bad ideology, and so that fit their narrative. And they could say, "Hey, it's Trump's fault because a white nationalist did this." It's in no way Trump's fault. Is it Bernie Sanders' fault that somebody shot up a congressional baseball game and shot Steve Scalise? No. We need to stop blaming things that aren't people's fault on the people. Anyway, they could also use the New Zealand thing to attempt to blame Trump for that, and they could use it as a way to try and push gun control, and it fit perfectly for them. But this one, this Easter one, it doesn't fit as well in their narrative because it's Christians that were blown up by radical Islamic terrorists. So obviously, this isn't all Muslims; it's the terrorists, and those guys are really bad. But instead of sitting there and condemning them the whole time, they're asking. There's literally some people that are blaming Christians on this. There's people on Twitter that are saying, yeah, this is bad, but you know what? Christians are really bad too. Are you kidding me, dude? Like, honestly? And I think there's a couple people who tweeted stuff like that on Twitter, and they got ratios, which means there's more comments than there were likes on their posts. So it was hilarious, and at least people saw through it and stuff. But there were some other things that were definitely interesting. All the news outlets, they refused to use the word Christians or mention Christians by name. It's similar kind of what happened in the Notre Dame fire last week. That was happening during my show. They talked about architecture and art, but they did everything they could to avoid mentioning Christianity and Christians by name. And let me ask you, what if Notre Dame had been like a prominent mosque that was burning down? Do you think they would have left Islam out of it? I don't think they would have. I think they would have mentioned it, and I think they should have mentioned it if it was something like that going on. But now is where we get into the really sketchy territory. And I'll read you some tweets from some prominent people. And if you're just tuning in, this is Just Hear Me Out. My name is Peyton Byers. I'm your host here on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. Just doing my political commentary show, Just Hear Me Out. So here's some tweets from a few prominent people. First, let's contrast the tweets between Hillary Clinton in the New Zealand shooting and Hillary Clinton with these bombings on Easter. Okay, so the New Zealand one. Quote, my heart breaks for New Zealand and the global Muslim community. We must continue to fight the perpetuation and normalization of Islamophobia and racism in all its forms. White supremacist terrorists must be condemned by leaders everywhere. Their murderous hatred must be stopped. I can get behind that. That's a respectable tweet. So let's contrast that with the tweet she had in response to this Sri Lanka thing on Easter Sunday. Quote, on this holy weekend for many faiths, okay, we must stand united against hatred and violence. I'm praying for everyone affected by today's horrific attacks on Easter worshippers and travelers in Sri Lanka. Easter worshippers. She refuses. We're called Christians, by the way. People who celebrate, Jesus and stuff. We're called Christians. Christ, Christians. It's in the name. Anyway, Barack Obama used the same thing. That quote, the attacks on tourists and Easter worshippers in Sri Lanka are an attack on humanity. One day devoted to love, redemption, and renewal, we pray for the victims who stand with the people of Sri Lanka. So he calls Easter worshippers. What's the deal with these Easter worshipper thing? You get the memo? Easter worshippers? I don't know. Julian Castro. Julian Castro. I don't know what his name is. He's running as a Democrat in the primary race for president, but he's not gonna get it. There's so many people in the Democratic presidential primary, so he thinks he's running for president, but he's not. His tweet says, "On a day of redemption and hope, the evil of these attacks on Easter worshippers and tourists in Sri Lanka is deeply saddening. My prayers today are with the dead and injured and their families. May we find grace." Easter worshippers. Why? And there's a bunch of people that are angry on the internet about people being angry, like being kind of upset that they refuse to use the word Christian. If it was a Muslim thing, they wouldn't say Ramadan worshippers were shot up in New Zealand. They'd say it was a Muslim mosque, and that's what they should say. They should say what it is. Like they're avoiding what's so it's like saying Christianity is like saying Voldemort. Like you can't, like they can't say it. They're like, oh, them. You can say it, guys. It's not, but I mean, there's a reason that they don't do this. It's because Christianity and Judeo-Christian values are considered by people on the left and liberals and stuff. They're considered to be white. They're white, and so intersectionality. If something is white, you can't touch that because that's just not how they operate. So like, if it's white, it's bad. Like, my opinion. I'm white. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter what your race is. But that brings me into the next article I want to talk about here. We have a lecturer, somebody who came in to give a lecture at Boston University, gave a lecture that tells students white people are dangerous if they say they don't see race. Guys, if you're not a racist, it's dangerous to not be racist. Did you know that? Apparently, that's how it is. So, if you're just tuning in, my name's Peyton Byers on Just Hear Me Out on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. This is Just Hear Me Out. Thank you for tuning in and listening. So, Boston, here, I'm going to read you a piece on this lecture. So, here we go. During a guest lecture at Boston University on Monday, University of Washington professor Robin DiAngelo told the audience a, quote, dangerous white person sees people as individuals rather than by skin color. DiAngelo, whose main field of work is, quote, whiteness studies, added that those who say they were taught to treat everyone the same deny black people of their reality. In making the claim, DiAngelo said she was lifting the terminology from a frequent co-facilitator at speaking engagements, black scholar Aaron Trent Johnson. DiAngelo's comments were couched during a session of her talk titled, "What Does It Mean to Be White?" that discussed colorblindness and those who say, I was taught to treat everyone the same, or some version of that. Quote, "If you're being honest, you've probably said it," she told her audience, then added that in reality, no one in the room was taught to treat everyone the same. Quote, "Your parents could lecture you to do it, but you didn't do it. You can't do it. There's no human objectivity," end quote. She said when she hears people talk about treating everyone the same, it tells her, quote, this person doesn't understand basic socialization. This person doesn't understand culture. This person is not self-aware, end quote. Quote, and I need to give a heads up to white people in the room, D'Angelo said. When people of color here say this, they're generally not thinking, all right, I'm talking to a woke white person right now. Usually some version of eye rolling is going on and a wall is going up. Quote, my friend Aaron Trent Johnson, she says, when I hear a white person say this, what I am thinking is, this is a dangerous white person. This is a white person who's going to need to deny my reality. D'Angelo's sentiments stand in stark contrast to a famous alumnus of the school, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who earned his PhD in theology from Boston University and famously pronounced that he had a dream that his 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But D'Angelo placed a great emphasis on racial identity throughout the lecture and dedicated a significant portion of her introduction to acknowledging the fact that she herself is a white person. As if that matters. Why does it matter what race you are? It should. Am I dangerous for thinking, oh, we should not judge somebody by the amount of melanin in their skin that they have absolutely no control of whatsoever and they're born with? That's ridiculous to judge somebody by that. Why would you judge somebody by something so stupid as literally they're turning into like the 1800s South, judging people based on the amount of melanin in their skin. What does that have to do with anything? I want to be clear, quote, I want to be clear that as I stand up here with authority and voice on this topic, I'm reinforcing whiteness and the centrality of the white view, she said. Quote, I'd like to be a little less white, which means a little less oppressive, oblivious, defensive, ignorant, and arrogant. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that people won't say Christianity because they associate Christianity with whiteness. Because apparently to the social justice warriors and the identitarian left, the act of being white, the act of not having as much melanin in your skin makes you oppressive, oblivious, defensive, ignorant, and arrogant. You have no control over it. You're born that way. Sorry, you were born that way. That's just how it is. You're just born as less. Does that sound fair? Does that sound equal at all? Does that sound... That's the definition of racism is what it is. Anyway, back to the story. She also stated that she, quote, was quote, going to admit things white people never admit to, and because of implicit bias, white people in the room will be more inclined to listen to her. She discussed how racism is systematic in the media, the family, religion, education, economics, language, and criminal justice. The common definition of racism as, quote, an individual who consciously does not like people based on race, is intentionally mean to them, allegedly protects the system of racism. She also talked about the rampant sexism this country faces. One slide of her presentation demonstrated that a majority of politicians, directors, and police officers are male, and that it is sexist for anyone to suggest that maybe men just happen to be more inclined to go into these fields of work. Quote, we live in a patriarchy, she affirmed, and even asserted her own husband is a product of the patriarchy. She encouraged the audience to think in terms of race, not the character of individual people, because all white people are racist to some degree, no matter what. D'Angelo is a frequent guest speaker at campuses across the nation, and she coined the term white fragility and recently wrote a book on the subject titled White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. I cannot begin to describe to you how absolutely stupid and backwards and wrong and derogatory and malicious and horrible this is and degenerative for the country. This way of thinking is literally the exact same way of thinking that allowed people to think it was okay to own slaves in the South. Literally, what was the reasoning behind it? Think about it. What was the reasoning? They go, okay, this person has a different skin color than me. They're not as good as me because of that. Ergo, it's okay for me to whip them and beat them and make them my slave. Right? That seems like, I think that's a valid representation of how slave owners in the South were. That's exactly what she's doing here. She's saying because of the amount of melanin in your skin that you cannot control, white people are automatically, oppressive, oblivious, racist. Are you kidding me? She's encouraging people to think of people based on their race, not the content of their character. She is literally the opposite of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he said that about what he wants the country to be in the future, what he wanted the country to be in the future, that's what we should be striving for, a place where we judge people based on their character, not based on their race. Yet here, some professor, how is she a college? This just shows to me that the college system is pretty broken. And like, I already knew this. I've discovered it in some of my classes. There's some professors that's just, you get stupider for sitting in their classes because they don't actually know what they're talking about in some instances. And it's not all of them. It's just some of them. But I'm pretty sure she's one of them. She literally is a whiteness studies professor is what she says. Since when is that a thing? I'm going to go get my underwater basket weaving degree from wherever she teaches. I can't. It's just. How can you be so. That is literally racist. She's literally just being a racist. I don't even know what else to say about it. How else can you characterize that? How can you how can you think that's okay to think? I don't understand. Anyway, I'm going to go to a break here so I can cool off a little bit before I get to my next topic. But anyway, after the break, I'll talk to you a little bit more about some recent political news, including a short look at the Bernie Sanders town hall and then a dive into the Mueller Report. Thank you so much. This is Just Hear Me Out on 91.1 KAOR Vermilion. Be right back. Alrighty, welcome back to Just Hear Me Out on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. I'm your host, Peyton Byers. Thank you for tuning in. And as I said before the break, now we're going to get into a little talk about the Bernie Sanders Fox News town hall, which I think it's a really interesting thing for me to give a little conversation on, because it was a town hall on Fox News. Obviously, Bernie Sanders is probably not the biggest fan of Fox News, and he kind of made that evidently clear during the town hall. This is kind of, since I do this show on a weekly basis, this is kind of old. This aired the night or like the day of my last show, but I thought I'd talk about it a little bit because it was definitely interesting. Definitely props to Fox News. They gave him a fair audience. They gave him, it was a good town hall. They've loaded the audience with a lot of Bernie fans. So, I mean, they didn't have to do that. So I think that was they were giving him something on that part. Anyway, I'm just going to play you one long clip that I recorded. It's like 3 minutes, 50 seconds of the town hall. It's just it's got a lot of the things I want to talk about, and I'm just going to get it all over at once, so I don't have to play a bunch of little clips, and then I'll talk to you in turn about those things. So here it is.
To your point, and to Joe's point, your taxes do show that you're a millionaire. You did make $1 million in 2016, 2017. You're right, the 561 in 2018. But your marginal tax rate was 26% because of President Trump's tax cuts. So why not say, I'm leading this revolution. I'm not going to take those.
Come on, we're doing. I paid the taxes that I owe. And by the way,
Bernie.
why don't you got Donald Trump up here and ask him how much he pays in taxes?
So now it's about Trump.
Well, I am eagerly awaiting your doing that.
Well, we'd love to have.
We would love to have that question.
Get him up
We
here.
absolutely
And
will.
the president, I guess the president watches your network a little bit, right?
There's
Hey,
a shot
President
at Fox
Trump,
News, which he does
my wife and I
repeatedly.
just released 10 years. Please do the same. Let the American people know how much money I'm making.
All right, but just to wrap that up, you do spend a lot of time vilifying millionaires.
No, I don't vilify. The fact
do.
that I think people who are doing phenomenally well right now, as you know, for 40 years we have seen a shrinking middle class. You got 40 million people living in poverty. And today, just so happens that the very wealthy are doing incredibly wealthy. It's not vilifying to say that people have a whole lot of money, in some cases billions of dollars of wealth. They should pay their fair share of taxes.
Right. Well,
that's not vilifying.
Last question on this. A lot of millionaires and billionaires give a ton to charity. You gave 3.4%.
Oh, that's significantly
My
less
wife
than
and I
most
do give money to charity. All right? And we're proud to do what we did. There are others, you're quite right. There are people, Gates Foundation, do a phenomenal job. We do what we do.
All right, I got a couple questions for you. So you recommended a wealth tax, 70% wealth tax.
No, actually, I didn't. That was
70,
somebody else.
77%.
No, I think another person.
What's your number?
What's my number? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that in order to make sure that elderly people do not continue to live in poverty, and you got 20% of elderly people trying to get by at $13,000 or $14,000 a year. I think we should raise that cap for people making $250,000 or more, so we can make sure that our parents can live out their lives in dignity. I'll tell you what else I think. I think at a time when Wall Street is doing phenomenally well, and we have millions of young people who are deeply in debt for the crime of having gone to college, I believe we should pass a speculation tax
Well,
on
that's
Wall
fine,
Street.
but I'm asking you about the wealthy and how much higher you would make it. You said
Yeah,
you don't agree with 70%. What would your number be?
In the campaign in 2016, we talked about 52%.
All right, so 52%. So would you be willing to pay 52% on the money that you made?
Awesome.
You can volunteer. You can send a
Oh,
check.
you can volunteer too. We have a
Deflection.
But you suggested that that's
Hey,
what
Martha.
everybody in your bracket should do.
And Martha, why don't you give? You make more money than I do.
Well,
Why
I
don't you
didn't
give?
suggest a wealth tax.
And she's not running for president.
And
All
I'm
right,
not
but
running
we're
for
going to
president.
fight for a wealth tax. And
We're
we're going
gonna
to
fight.
demand that we end the absurdity where major corporation after major corporation. You know what?
Yeah,
in
but I'm
this
talking
tax
about
bill,
individual taxes
in this
right now.
tax bill that you are defending, families like the
defending any
Koch
tax bill.
brothers,
We're
of course
asking
you're
you
defending
questions
it.
about what you
Families
propose.
like the Koch brothers get billions
not
and
gonna answer my
billions of
question.
dollars in savings. That is absurd. Trump wants to repeal the entire estate tax, huge tax breaks for billionaires. You got another question?
Well, we're
We have
talking-
many questions.
We have many questions.
And listen,
All right,
we
so
want to get
that's-
substance. We want to get details.
let's
It
do
was a long section, but here I'm going to talk about it now in turn. So, first of all, Bernie was asked why he doesn't voluntarily pay more taxes despite the tax cut, and then he goes, "Oh no, they got me. You know what? I don't practice what I preach, but Donald Trump, ask him what he pays in Texas." And they go, "No, we asked you what you pay in Texas." He goes, "Donald Trump." So he tries to deflect that one. Good job, Bernie. Way to deflect it. And then Brett Baer goes, "Okay, well, people in your tax bracket tend to give a lot of money to charity." And so you gave 3.4%, that's really low for somebody who's in his tax bracket. And so he goes, after Brett Baer calls him out for that, Brett Baer calls him out for giving less money in taxes. And then Bernie goes, "Yes, I do give money to charity, and Bill Gates gives money to charity, and I give money too, and I do what I do, and he does what he does, and I do what I do." And so why doesn't Bernie give more money to charity? It's a good question. And what exactly does fair share of taxes mean? Because he uses that term a lot. He says, the 1% need to pay their fair share in taxes. And I'm kind of wondering, so what is the fair share? Well, he says they don't pay their fair share, but in 2016, the top 1% of taxpayers accounted for 37.3% of all income tax paid. That's about 7% more than the bottom 90% combined. Think about that. The top 1% that he says isn't paying their fair share is paying 37.3% of all income taxes. That seems a little like they're paying more than their fair share to me. And so don't fall for Bernie's 1% shtick. Is the 1% are getting into the 99%, and the 1% are taking over the 99%. They're getting more money than the 99%. Then the 1% is getting. Don't fall for that. He wants to raise taxes on everyone, not just the 1%. And he even admits it. He admits it later. I'll play the clip in a little bit here. But then he's asked if he'd be willing to give 52% of his income, because that's a number that he proposed. He was asked if he'd give 52% of his income in taxes, and then he gets defensive and deflects to the host because they go, "Would you give your 52%? Why don't you do that now? Because that's what you say everybody in your bracket should give. So why don't you just do that to lead by example?" And he goes, "Why don't you give more money?" And they go, "Well, obviously, because we didn't propose it and we're not running for president." And so not a good look for Bernie in that situation. Overall, like him going on Fox to do this town hall is it's good for Bernie though. Bernie is he's taking a big step forward by doing that. That was a positive thing for him to do. It's going to help his campaign to do that because he's showing that he is able to argue against the opposition, because a lot of the other Democrats refuse to go on any form of a conservative show and actually have to defend their positions. And Bernie said, "You know what? I'm going to go into the belly of the beast. I'm going to go to Fox News." And so he went to Fox News, and he didn't do too bad. I mean, there was a couple slip-ups. He didn't do too bad, though. So finally, he mentions the estate tax, which he's like, they want to get rid of the estate tax. And that is going to make It's gonna give the billionaires and the millionaires too much money. Okay, first of all, for those of you who don't know, an estate tax, basically when somebody dies, an estate tax is while that people are like the heirs to the dead person are inheriting the money, it's a tax on the money that they're inheriting. So an estate tax, say your dad has $1 million or something like that, he dies, the estate tax would kick in on that $1 million and you wouldn't get all of that. Some of that would be taxed out, and it's a pretty high estate tax is what Bernie calls for. He wants the estate tax. But what he doesn't understand, and what I think a lot of the middle of the country would find out real quick, especially if he started hiking the thing up, is an estate tax is not good for farmers, small business owners, stuff like that. An estate tax is like crippling because say you got a family farm, right? Imagine this. You got a guy, he's got the family farm, he built it up, he probably received it from his dad. And so you got the family farm, and this guy's got sons, and the sons are working on the family farm, and he's gonna just pass down the family farm to the sons when he dies, right? So like you can imagine, say they're just getting by as the family farm. They have all their equipment, say they have all their equipment paid for and stuff, and they just got it all paid for, no more loans. They have their shop, their equipment and stuff, but they don't have a lot of liquid cash. They don't have cash. It's all put into their equipment and their land and stuff like that. All of a sudden, the dad dies or whatever, and it gets passed down to the sons. The estate tax is going to kick in on all that stuff, and all of a sudden, they're going to owe the government a heck of a lot of money, and they're not. It destroys the farm. Same thing with a small business. Say, small business owner, you don't have a whole lot. Say you just got out of debt, you don't have a whole lot of liquid cash, but you're inheriting the business, whatever that business is worth. The government's going to try and take their cut, and so it destroys stuff like that. It is extremely anti-small business, and I think the middle of the country, if they think about that at all, is definitely going to cut against the people, like the states that weren't supposed to go to Trump but did, like you get your Michigans and your Pennsylvanias and stuff. That area, the Rust Belt area, that I think that portion of the country is gonna not feel too great about that either, and they're not gonna like that if it gets brought up. But then Bernie goes into some other weird stuff later. He talks about a tax cut, or the Trump tax cut, and how he gave you a tax cut, but it wasn't as much of a tax cut as you expected. So here's him talking about that.
I happen to believe, Joe, that we have an absurd tax system. And while millions of people today are paying actually more in taxes than they anticipated, Amazon, Netflix, and dozens of major corporations, as a result of Trump's tax bill, pay nothing in federal taxes. I think that's a disgrace. So
he's complaining about corporations and stuff. Well, you can do that all you want. But he claims that he's like, you did not get as much of a tax cut as you thought you were going to get. You paid more on taxes than you expected. All of the middle class did get a tax cut. So he's essentially saying that. He's saying, yeah, you got a tax cut, but it wasn't as much of a cut as you expected. Bernie wants to raise taxes on everybody. Like, it would be worse than, I don't understand what his point is there, because Bernie wants to raise taxes on everyone. And you might think, oh, he says he just wants to raise it on the rich people. No, he says he's going to raise them on everybody. And he's not, like, he comes out and says it. And so here, don't believe me? Here he is saying it.
Healthcare is not free. You never heard me suggest that we're going to magically...
You just said it was going to be free for everyone.
It's going to be free at the point of when you use it, okay? And you go to... Why are you so shocked by this? You're not paying any more premiums. You're not paying any more co-payments. You're not paying any more deductibles. But does that mean you're not going to pay something? Of course it does. You're going to pay more in taxes.
So there he is, and that was a little cut together thing. That wasn't one fluid take, but I cut out the applauses and stuff in the audience and the inner questions. So you got the gist of the argument. That was the flow of it, though. And so, yeah, basically he's talking about Medicare for all, and he says, okay, you know what? You are going to pay more in taxes. You're just not going to pay for the health care when you get the health care. And so that's a little bit of a pivot. For those of you just tuning in, speaking of pivots, I am Peyton Byers, your host on Just Hear Me Out here on KOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. And all of a sudden, Bernie just admits that healthcare costs aren't being eliminated for taxpayers. They're just being shifted to tax payments. And do you want the government managing that stuff? I don't think so. Anyway, we're going to go into a little break here. When I get back, I'll talk to you a little bit about the Mueller Report and what it means and everything. Thank you for listening. This is 91.1 KAOR FM Vermilion. KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. This is Just Hear Me Out. I'm your host, Peyton Byers. I'll be with you after the break. Alrighty, welcome back to Just Hear Me Out on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. I'm your host, Peyton Byers, here on Just Hear Me Out. And I'm going to get to a little conversation here about the Mueller Report because it dropped. And so basically, what the Mueller Report found, we already knew that Russia was messing with our election. That's not a question. The question was whether or not Trump was colluding with Russia or conspiring with Russia in the election meddling stuff. So it found that Trump and his team were in fact not conspiring with Russia, or at least there's no proof that they were conspiring with Russia in their efforts. And I got a few quotes from the actual report here, so I'm pretty sure the first person outside of a government agency to read the Mueller report in full was Ben Shapiro, and he did a very good. If you want to actually listen to a full overview of it and like know what went on, because I probably can't do the greatest job of explaining it. Ben Shapiro did a full objective overview of it, he read the whole thing and found the conclusions and stuff and the important information and did an objective, nonpartisan overview of it he's a lawyer and he explained the legalese, and then he went in and he talked about his opinion on it, but he did an objective summary first, which was nice. But I have a couple quotes here from the Mueller report, so here's one part that's interesting. Quote, while the investigation identified numerous links between individuals with ties to the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign, the evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges. Among other things, the evidence was not sufficient to charge any campaign official as an unregistered agent of the Russian government or other Russian principal. And our evidence about the June 9, 2016 meeting and WikiLeaks releases of hacked materials was not sufficient to charge any criminal campaign finance violation. Further, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election. So there you have it, no collusion. That's essentially the line there. Now, the media latched onto this and they said, not sufficient to charge. That means he might have done it. He might have done it. They just can't charge it because they don't have the evidence, but he did it somewhere and the evidence isn't somewhere. First of all, I'd say if they spent an entire 2 years investigating this, I have a feeling the evidence, if there is evidence out there, they would have it. Second of all, I don't think people need to decide, is Trump a criminal mastermind or is Trump an evil, an idiot? Is he an idiot? Because a lot of people call him an idiot, but if he's an idiot, he's probably not a criminal mastermind that's able to go under the nose of every federal agency and still collude with Russia and be Putin's agent. I don't think that's the thing. Anyway, here's another quote from the Mueller report. Further, quote, further, the office learned that some of the individuals interviewed or whose conduct we investigated, including some associated with the Trump campaign, deleted relevant communications or communicated during the relevant period using applications that feature encryption or that do not provide for long-term retention of data or communications records. In such cases, the office was not able to corroborate witness statements through comparison to contemporaneous communications or fully question witnesses about statements that appeared inconsistent with other known facts. So right there you have a little thing. So that's where people are going, okay, what if they deleted the evidence and stuff? First of all, if you're going to talk about deleting stuff and deleting communications, there's a lady named Hillary Rodham Clinton that I'd like to introduce you to. And second of all, the people using encryption, applications that feature encryption and stuff in government agencies, that's not uncommon. People who are high profile people, that's not uncommon. It's even small business people and stuff, they use encryption because who wants to get their data stolen? They were actually kind of smart about it. So the people, I don't think we should be looking down and say, oh, they use a service that had encryption on it, ergo they must be guilty. That's not a good conclusion to draw. That's not a logical conclusion to draw. Is it possible? Yes. Does the encryption prove that, or does the encryption suggest that they were doing something bad? No. Anyway, another quote from the Mueller report. Accordingly, while this report embodies factual and legal determinations that the office believes to be accurate and complete to the greatest extent possible, given these identified gaps, the office cannot rule out the possibility that the available information would shed additional light on or cast in a new light the events described in the report. So basically that's them saying there could be other stuff out, there could have been deleted stuff that might have, given us more information, which is just an obvious statement. If they had more information, they'd have more information. So basically, the first half of the report is full of stuff like that, saying there's a lot of people that talk to a lot of people who talk to a lot of people who might have talked to the Russians, or who did talk to the Russians. Like there's a lot of telephone going on, but there's no collusion, no conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Is basically what it came up with. Trump did things that could be considered immoral or unethical, but he did not do things that were illegal in any circumstance here. So, I mean, that's just the finding of the report. The Trump team hoped they would benefit from the Russian meddling in the election if it was happening, but they didn't participate in it or facilitate it in any way, so it's not their fault. If it's anybody's fault, it's Obama's fault, because he was the president at the time. He was the chief of the executive branch at the time. He was overseeing it happen. If it was happening, and somebody had to do something about it, it would have been him. It wouldn't have been the Trump, like the campaign. A campaign, all of a sudden, since when is a campaign responsible for preventing outside political actors from affecting an election? That's the government's duty. The second half of the report was all about obstruction of justice allegations because people were claiming that Trump obstructed justice in his complaining about the Mueller investigation, because Trump was mad, he was angry, he was frustrated at it, because he believed that they were investigating like something that didn't happen, and the obstruction of justice stuff is where Trump got closest to being convicted of a crime. But it's still not enough to convict him of a crime, and he did not obstruct justice. He was very angry and frustrated at the report, but people forget that he could have legally fired Mueller or anyone else in the executive branch at any time for whatever reason he wanted to. He could have said, Mueller, I don't like your hair looks stupid today, so you're fired. He could have done that, and that would not have been obstruction of justice. Now, if he would have said, Mueller, I'm going to fire you because I think you're going to find something on me, something criminal on me, that's obstruction of justice. But you have to, obstruction of justice, this is an intent crime. Like, he has to intend to do this. And I think like I said earlier, if you want to listen to a great legal analysis of this, Ben Shapiro did a great job of analyzing it and, giving insight onto the legalese and stuff and how to interpret and stuff. So he could have fired anybody he wanted to. He didn't. He had every opportunity to shut down the Mueller report. He didn't. And what did we find? We found that he did a lot of immoral stuff. He was angry, and he told a lot of people, he's like, hey, you should tell that person not to do this to me. And he told his people to lie to the press and stuff. He said, hey, you should go out there and tell the press that this happened, and don't tell them this. He can do that. It's not against the law. He can tell them to lie to the press all he wants, as long as he doesn't tell people to lie to the authorities. Then he's fine, because lying to the authorities, that would be criminal, and that's actually what got Bill Clinton in trouble, because he told people to lie to the authorities under oath about his whole Monica Lewinsky thing. So that's where Bill Clinton got in trouble. He didn't get in trouble for the actual Monica Lewinsky stuff. He didn't get in trouble for the acts. He got in trouble for trying to hide it. And Trump and Clinton aren't the only presidents to do this. All the presidents lie. All of them lie. Obama lied and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. You want somebody? Some people are gonna be to some people, Obama's like the great savior. I don't understand it. But you want to hear some examples of him lying? Well, if you like your coverage, you like your medical coverage, you can keep your coverage. You like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That was one. He said this, quote, more young black men languish in prison in America than attend colleges and universities across America. That was a lie. In fact, that's a horribly, just completely wrong statistic in all accounts. Countless other lies. Oh, yeah, you lied about Benghazi and then lied about lying about Benghazi, so that's a thing. And countless other times. And we already knew Trump was like this. When he ran for president, we knew he was kind of a sleazy, lying guy. That was priced into the package. People voted for him despite that. They knew that he was like this. Every scandal he has is like this. Trump does something immoral and embarrassing. Trump lies and tries to cover it up. He tries to cover up the embarrassing thing by doing more immoral and embarrassing things. Ben Shapiro made that point not that long ago, and he was going over the Mueller report. He said, "This is just how it is." Like, think about the Stormy Daniels case. It's exactly how it happened with the Stormy Daniels thing. First, Trump he goes and does what he does with Stormy Daniels, a porn star, It's a very immoral and embarrassing thing to do. And then when it comes out, he covers it up with even more immoral and embarrassing behavior by lying and trying to cover it. He goes, I don't even know who Stormy Daniels is. I never heard of her. I have no idea who she is. And then it turns out, well, he did know who she was, and he did do what everybody said he was doing, and then he paid her off, so he did know who it was. But this isn't new. Everybody knew this about Trump already. I don't like that's why I don't think it's going to hurt him a whole lot, because everybody knew this already. What I think is interesting is the media response to this. So the media is responding by cherry picking stuff out of the report. They're saying they're latching on to this is not an exoneration of President Trump. It was never going to be an exoneration of President Trump, because an exoneration would be him being proved innocent. There's nothing for him to be exonerated from. He was never proven guilty of anything. And they've been blowing up unreliable pieces of information, like the Steele dossier, the dossier that was funded by Fusion GPS. It came from like a Ukraine ex-British Secret Service operative, paid for by Fusion GPS, Hillary Clinton's opposition research firm. So it was paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign. And this dossier said that Trump was peeing on Russian prostitutes and stuff, and then he was involved with Putin and stuff. Turns out that was completely fake, and that was a bombshell. The media talked about that for days. They've been blowing up these unreliable pieces of information, and I've listened to people talk about how journalism is under fire and stuff, and like a bunch of my professors are all fired up because journalism is being attacked, and that people are not, they don't trust the press anymore. And then there's another professor who just basically, you'd think it was their job to go around and say that it's absolutely unacceptable for people to criticize the press the way they're being criticized. But I mean, maybe the people in the media wouldn't get criticized so much if they actually did their jobs and reported objectively on things that happen. The members of the media, a lot of them have become so obsessed with their hatred for President Trump. They've been so consumed by it that they forget to actually check the information they run with. Any whisper of something that might be bad for President Trump, and they jump on it and they report it like it's something. CNN and MSNBC hosts were like visibly upset, and some even cried on air. Rachel Maddow cried on air when it was announced that Trump wasn't being indicted in the Mueller report. So that's ridiculous. Anyway, last week I did a This Day in History on my birthday, and another, like April 15th is full of horrible stuff and a couple really good things, but mostly horrible stuff like the Titanic sinking and stuff like that, and the Notre Dame fire is just another thing to add to that. But I thought I would throw in a This Day in History for today for the last thing. So here we go. This Day in History. Turns out April 22nd isn't very good either. In 1915, the first military use of poison gas was chlorine by Germany in World War I, so that's bad. 1976, Barbara Walters became the first female nightly network news anchor on the Today Show. 1993, the Holocaust Memorial Museum was dedicated in D.C. In 1994, 7,000 Tutsis were slaughtered by the Hutu in a stadium in Kibuye, Rwanda. So that's sad and bad. The Rwandan genocide. If you don't know about that, you should look into it, because that was a horrible thing that happened not that long ago. 2006, 243 people were injured in a pro-democracy protest in Nepal after Nepali security forces opened fire on protesters. In 1876, the first National League baseball game occurred, and in 1870, Vladimir Lenin was born. Anyway, that is it for the semester, and Just Hear Me Out. Thank you all so much for listening. It's been such a great semester. I'm Peyton Byers. This is Just Hear Me Out on KEOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. Come back next semester and listen. I thank you all so much. Can't wait to get back at this. That's it for the semester, guys. I'll see you later. Thank you.